You're listening to Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast for and by Rockies fans on Rocky Mountain Rooftop. Thank you for joining us as we discuss all things baseball and Colorado Rockies. Hello and welcome to Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast on Rocky Mountain Rooftop, proud affiliate of the Fans First Sports Network. I'm your host, Evan Lang, and with me, as always, my partner in crime, Skyler Tibbins.
Hey, we're back.
After a week away.
Yes.
Nothing possibly could have happened in that week we took off, Skyler.
Nope, absolutely nothing.
Definitely not the Rockies going on their longest winning streak since May of 2024.
Yes, and other tragic things in personal lives.
But we're here to talk about the Colorado Rockies, and fresh off of a win today against the Arizona Diamondbacks to avoid being swept at home.
Yeah, it's been playing better baseball as of late, and I was half conscious during the Sunday game because I was napping in the recliner, but I had my tablet laying on my chest, so I was listening to the whole thing and drifting in and out of sleep, but I did see Mickey Moniak's home run. So
see, that sounds like a fabulous way to spend a Sunday afternoon, though. You're just kind of dozing off, listening to the baseball game. That sounds great.
Yeah.
And that really is the thing, is that you can't put it any other way. The Rockies are still bad. Like, they need to play basically 500 ball the rest of the season to avoid setting a new franchise worst record.
Yeah, somebody asked me that today. They asked me the question of, will the Rockies win 30 games this year? And I was like, maybe. But I told them, they're still awful. The difference is, they asked if they were getting better. I was like, they're more watchable now.
Yes, I think that's the perfect way to put it, is the Rockies are still bad. They're still going to lose a lot of games. They were the first team to 60 losses this season in Major League Baseball. But they are far, far more watchable. Like, I cannot begin to describe how night and day it feels between like watching today's game or even yesterday's game, where the Rockies lost, but it was at least kind of close, and the baseball that they were playing at the beginning of the season, which was just an absolute slog of misery.
Yeah, or even this whole series against the Diamondbacks, or even game one. Yeah, they lost big, but they hung in there. No, they had some comebacks, and it just fell short because they weren't able to. The Diamondbacks just rallied even more against them. Yeah, it's still a bad team, poorly constructed team that's not performing very well. But they're getting better as of late, or they're playing better over the last month and a half.
Yeah, June especially, they have not been swept since the first week of the month against the Mets, which I know it's only been a couple of series, but that's, the kind of standard that the Rockies have unfortunately set for the season, is that they're at least coming away with a win every now and then. We haven't had these 8-game losing streaks that the team has repeatedly had throughout the year. They've had 3 so far, 8-game losing streaks.
Mm-hmm.
And for the month of June, it's just been a better brand of baseball. And yes, some of the teams that they are winning against are the dregs of baseball, much like the Rockies are. But the fact that they can at least go in and say, we can at least beat the other bad teams is a big difference compared to the beginning of the season. So in June, they swept the Miami Marlins. They took a game against the Giants. They took a game against the Braves. They took 3 of 4 against the Washington Nationals, and then they took the series finale win against the Diamondbacks here at home. And you mentioned the series opener, where it ended up being a blowout, but for most of the game, it was kind of just a good old-fashioned cores off.
Mm-hmm.
For the first 6 innings.
Yeah, and you go back to those Giants games where they legitimately had a chance where they could have won all 3 of those, or all of those Giants games, or at least 3 of them. And so, like we said, it's competitive. No, they may not be winning everything, and they're playing against some bad teams, and they're not blowing out any of those teams really. But they're competitive. They're hanging in there. You're seeing the growth, which is nice to see, and it's momentum that you hope that they can carry when they face the Diamondbacks, who always play well against the Rockies, no matter what. So those are usually good ones. But I think that real test will be this coming week when they face the Dodgers. When the Dodgers come to town, and seeing how the Rockies size up against them and kind of face that challenge of, you've been playing some pretty bad teams. How are you going to fare against the Dodgers? That'll be a good litmus test to see where the team is at, and some of the things that we're going to talk about here in this segment of, can those things stack up? Like, how do those measure up against good and really good teams?
Yeah, where the Rockies so far in June here, the biggest thing is that the offense exists, which they struggled mightily on offense throughout the majority of the season, and it's been better. And right now, the Rockies are, as a team, are hitting 260, 317, 468 in the month of June. Not exactly eye-popping numbers, but pretty solid numbers, where they're in the top 10 in the league for June for batting average. They're around middle of the pack leave average for on base percentage, and they're doing pretty okay for, oh wow, actually they lead the league in slugging percentage in the month of June. And I know part of it, and people are going to say it, and it is true, is it's getting hotter. The ball is going to carry further, especially at Coors Field over the last couple of games where it has been scorchingly hot. We had temperatures at first pitch of like 100 degrees the last couple nights. And yeah, the ball is going to fly farther. But the thing is, the Rockies are still putting the ball in play. Mm-hmm. And it was rough for a minute because during that Atlanta series, they struck out a lot, which has been something that overall the team's actually been a lot better at recently. But then while they were in Atlanta, it was just, okay, this is pretty painful.
Yeah, they're a team that they're never gonna walk a ton. That's not in the Rockies' identity, and so when they're not walking, it's trying to manage those strikeouts. And for the most part, they're still striking out at least 5-6 times a game. That's like in that 6 to 12 range, I think, is where they kind of seem to sit most of the time. So yeah, strikeouts are just a part of their identity, who they are, unfortunately. And sometimes it's going to be really good, sometimes it's going to be bad. But it's that slugging aspect that kind of makes the difference in how palatable it is. If that makes sense. With strikeouts are never palatable, but they're manageable, and you can stomach. We struck out 12 times, only walked twice, but hey, we had like 7 extra base hits. Like, heck yeah, type of thing.
Yeah, it's the ultimate microcosm of that hitting identity is, funnily enough, a guy who we need to talk about this segment is Michael Toglia, mm-hmm. where, especially in the second half of last season, June and onward, after he called back up from AAA, Toglia, yes, he struck out a lot, but he was drawing some walks, and more importantly, he was putting the ball in play, hitting a lot of home runs. And Toglia started off the season this year, as we've talked about, struggling a lot, striking out a ton, not drawing walks, not really putting the bat to the ball very well. He had some home runs, but they sent him down to AAA Albuquerque, sort of hit the reset button, get right. He's back up, and he's been hitting pretty well since.
Yeah, just looking better, looking more comfortable. And that's what you could maybe say about the entire offense of, okay, like first base, we're just worried about what's going to happen with Michael Toglia. We know what he can do. A big part of it is just finding some consistency. And, this season, he was consistently bad. Striking out way too much, was not making a lot of contact. When he would, okay, he's still smacking the heck out of the ball. But even then, just everything was not good. If you looked at his baseball savant and all those, the percentile bars and everything, there's a lot more blue in there than should have been compared to last year, where that thing was a cherry pie. There was a lot of red in there, and he needed that reset. And that's kind of what this whole offense is needed, is guys like that getting their resets and just finding some consistency. Stop trying to do too much. Instead, let's string together hits. Like we've talked about a ton on here, Evan. They kept on, we need the big hit. No, you need to string together a bunch of little hits, then the big hits will come. And I think we're starting to see that a little bit with like even guys like Michael Toglia. They're getting the little hits in there. So then that makes those big hits more meaningful when they do happen.
Yeah, and Warren Schaeffer said after today's game, despite the fact that the Rockies have been hitting more home runs recently, and we'll get to that in a minute, but he said in today's post game is that we don't want to be the team that just sits around and tries to hit homers, because that hasn't worked for us. Is that you can't have the all or nothing approach. And I think a guy who really encapsulates that philosophy is the guy that's been playing almost every day since he got called up, is Ryan Ritter. When we spoke to Ryan Ritter on the show just after the start of the season, he talked about his hitting philosophy of, if I hit a home run, great. If I do something, great. But my focus is going to be taking a good at bat and just trying to get the barrel to the ball, and whatever happens after that is whatever happens after that. And that sort of feels like where the team is at right now, of not trying to put everything completely on their shoulders of, I have to hit a home run, I have to do this, we've got to survive based on the long ball. And the long ball has still been here, it's still been a part of the game, but we've had other bits where it's not necessarily the only thing that the Rockies are doing.
Yeah. It always felt like, okay, they were hoping everybody in that lineup, save maybe one guy, will hit a home run, like be the big hitter. That's not what we're seeing. And now you already had a perfect segue, but I'll give you another one of Tyler Freeman encapsulates that. Of look at the job he has done as of late. No, on Sunday, a 10-game hitting streak now. He has been phenomenal as of late. And it's not because he's hitting home runs and getting those big giant hits. It's the dude's just constantly on base. He puts the bat to the ball. He's getting base knocks, driving runs in. He's doing it all while playing good enough defense. But he's getting bat to the ball, and they're finding a place to stick him into the lineup.
And the big thing about that is, because we've talked about it before, of just getting on base, just having a high batting average, that can be kind of empty. We've talked about it with, Jonathan Daza when he's had 300 hitting seasons, or Jose Iglesias of, he's getting hits, he's getting on base, but nothing generally happens after that, or nothing really happens because of that. And right now, you can't really say the same about Tyler Freeman, who's got 10 ribbies, 7 here in the month of June, to tie in with the fact that he's got, he's hitting 323 with an on-base percentage of 412. And he's getting some extra base hits in addition to just the singles. And you've seen then the Rockies have the ability under Warren Schaeffer to put Freeman basically anywhere they want in the lineup. They've put him at the top, they've put him in the middle, they've put him at the bottom, and no matter where he is, he hits, he's scoring runs, he gets scored himself, he's a stealing threat. And I'm really, really happy to be proven wrong about Tyler Freeman. I mentioned the other day doing a stream for the Rockies game with Purple Row via playback, and I mentioned it's like, I want to be proven wrong. I don't like being proven right when I am negative about something, and I was not happy about the Nolan Jones trade, and I was not happy about getting Tyler Freeman back in the Nolan Jones trade. And over the last couple weeks especially, he has shut me up. Love watching the guy. Ton of fun.
Yeah, with runners and with men on base, not just runners in scoring position, but just men on base in general, Evan. He's hitting 293 with a 373 on base, 366 slugging. Now you take those numbers, like that's pretty good with a guy hitting with men on base. Now it falls down with runners in scoring position. Yeah, it's a 250 average, 276 on base, 250 slugging. But with just men on base, he's just passing the baton, moving guys up, doing things. He's got 6 walks with men on and 3 strikeouts. So he's a contact machine, and coming up in big spots with men on base, he just passes the baton to the next guy behind him, who was the Jordan Becks, the Mickey Moniaks, the Ryan McMahons that are coming behind him. Those are the types of guys you want in that lineup, because then that guy helps make the other hitters better. Jordan Beck has been heating up. Ryan McMahon has started to heat up. Hunter Goodman's continued to be hot.
Yeah, it's the connective tissue that this lineup really hasn't had, where you feel like you've got one part of the lineup hitting really well, and the rest of the lineup, especially the bottom of the lineup, is a black hole. And you need the kind of guy who can pass the baton and be the connective tissue between different parts of the lineup. And while Tyler Freeman's numbers with runners in scoring position are lower than his general numbers with runners on base, they're still fine.
Yeah, and
for the kind of player that he is.
Yeah, his role isn't to be the guy always hitting with runners in scoring position. He's supposed to be the runner in scoring position, and he's doing his job there. And then the guys behind him are then able to do their part of, oh, I'm Jordan Beck. I'm going to hit a 2-run homer in the first inning because Tyler Freeman got on and stole second base. And, oh, all of a sudden Rockies are up 2-1 type of thing. So he I think the connective tissue is a good metaphor to use there of just lengthening the lineup where it all then starts to weave together a little better.
Yeah. And I also want to give him a shout out because he is not a right fielder. And I will say that Tyler Freeman in right field has certainly been an adventure sometimes this season. But you know what? Honestly, he's doing fine. Like, it's not the prettiest right field work, but it'll do. And the fact that he's just he's doing what he needs to do, where, he's not getting playing time in center field or at shortstop or at second base, which are more natural positions for him, because those positions are spoken for. But right field, especially now that the Rockies had finally gotten rid of, Nick Martini, they've got room for him to play out there, and he's making a case for continuing to be put out there.
Yeah. No, and he's doing his job. So good on Tyler Freeman.
Yeah. And then the other guy who's been playing a lot of right field that's really proved us wrong is Mickey Moniak. Like, I would say over the last couple of weeks here in June, I've become a Mickey maniac, as it were. Mickey Moniak's been incredible in the month of June. He's been one of the Rockies' best hitters. He's been one of the better hitters in baseball in June. He's hitting .371, .436, .914 with 5 home runs, a triple, 2 doubles, 9 ribbies, 4 walks to 9 strikeouts, 2 stolen bases out of 2 attempts. He's been good. And, we were not high on the Rockies bringing in Mickey Moniak at the beginning of the season. And
it was mostly, he is a perfectly fine 4th outfield bench piece that plays occasionally.
And now he's platoon right fielder.
Yeah, he's platoon. I'm going to play any of these outfield positions day to day and mixed in with Sam Hilliard and Tyler Freeman.
Yeah. And he's earning that playing time. He's tearing the cover off the ball. The home runs have been fun. You can't help but like the guy. And some of the things that he's said in interviews and in the clubhouse have really, really endeared Mickey Moniak to me. Like, there was a piece in USA Today a couple days ago where, they talked to Mickey and he's saying like all the right things of like, we'd be doing a disservice to the team and to the fans to not take this learning opportunity to try and grow and build.
Mm-hmm.
And I've grown quite fond of him, and I'm at the point where I still think that if you get, say, a very good offer for him at the trade deadline, you of course make that move because the Rockies should be willing to move pretty much anybody who's not nailed down. But at just 26 years old, I think you could also potentially find a spot in the future for Mickey Moniak if he can continue to play the way he has.
And how about this? He's 2nd on the team in runs batted in.
Behind, of course,
Hunter Goodman, who has nearly double the amount. But then he's 3rd in home runs, just behind Ryan McMahon, who has 12. He's at 2nd. He's right up there. No, he leads the team in triples. He's against all odds. Like, Mickey's doing his thing and quietly having that kind of tapping into that potential that the Rockies saw in him and hoped he could tap back into, and heralding back to that really good season he had with Los Angeles, with the Angels. And he's only done it in less than 200 at bats, but he's starting to find his more consistent playing time and starting to figure some things out and contributing and it's looking good. Where you can see that he has. It seems like any chance he has, especially this month of June, where he could hit a home run at any moment. And it's fun when you have players like that, where it feels like Mickey can run into one here, and lo and behold, then he does. Huge 3-run homer, difference maker on Sunday to win against the Diamondbacks. Clutch home run. He's had a couple of those. In Atlanta when when they hit a couple of home runs in the ninth inning, Mickey had one that kind of put him over the top. So he's doing his job in that, embracing whatever role he's going to be in. He's doing his part to just help the team.
Yeah, and he seems to have, ingratiated himself in the clubhouse really well. Pregame on Friday, it was him and Orlando Arcia who were leading the charge out onto the field to start the game. It's been really nice to see. And how about where the Rockies are at home run wise, where they've hit 29 home runs in the month of June. And right now they have 4 players with double-digit home runs, which is, compared to how they were at the end of May, a huge change.
Yeah, and just the home runs in general, it's nice because you got to be able to hit home runs. You have to. Now, you're saying the Rockies aren't going to be the all-or-nothing type of team, but it needs to be something that you can still be capable of doing. And yeah, they're still, I guess they've moved up. They moved up to 21st in the league in home runs at 77. Still a far cry from first, where the Dodgers are. But, it's slowly creeping back.
Yeah.
And especially power on the road was nice to see against Atlanta and Washington. It's slowly creeping in. You're seeing guys to get more comfortable. And yeah, warmer weather, ball's going to fly a little better. Okay, good. We'll take it.
Yeah, but you still got to have good at bats and make good contact to make that ball fly further.
Yeah, it's not like these are a bunch of wall scrapers or anything. Like, they're hitting them with authority, and then ball's just flying.
And so just going back to where we were at the end of May, the Rockies had just 48 total team home runs, and not a single player had double-digit home runs. The closest was Jordan Beck with 8.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, like we started the segment with, it's watchable baseball. It's better baseball. It's more fun to watch overall. And that's something that I think, after everything we went through at the beginning of the season, after 6 straight losing seasons, after the back-to-back 100-loss seasons, and knowing full well that another one is probably on the way here this season, because the Rockies have to be over 500 the rest of the way to even stand a chance of not losing 100 games.
Mm-hmm.
I think we'll take what we're getting right now.
Yeah. It's saying more enjoyable, more watchable. They still stink, but it's more fun and more competitive in a way where, some of the losses you're like, maybe this is just some Stockholm syndrome setting in.
Oh, that wasn't so bad. I only got stabbed a couple times.
We only lost by 4 in this game. Heck yeah. But no, it's a lot of those just real close games. Like, you don't feel as bad about a game where you've lost by 2 runs or less than you do when you're getting blown out. And the Rockies have had a lot more games where lost by 2 runs, but then it comes down to the little tiny things of, if something had gone different in such and such inning, if we had just gotten the one hit, we'd be talking about a different game. And those are more fun conversations to have than we got blown out in the first inning where we gave up 7 runs and we just can never come back, or those times when it felt like we're losing by 1 run, it's 1-0, we're never going to win, we can't overcome that.
Yeah, it feels like today's game, the Diamondbacks went up early 2-0, and it did not feel like the game was over already.
Yeah, you trust your pitchers to, like, okay, if they can just hold it, the offense can try and make a comeback. And
somehow Antonio Senzatela has 3 wins.
Yeah, and what's his ERA?
A lot.
And meanwhile, Kyle Freeland has a 5-point-something ERA, and he has 1 win.
And he's on the injured list. But yeah, just, it's a better brand of baseball that we've been getting, and like we've said repeatedly, the team is not fixed. There still needs to be seismic change. But if they can keep playing like this, at least for the rest of the season, it's going to be a lot less painful along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Because we were talking about originally, can the Rockies get to 20 wins before they can get to 100 losses? And now they're just 2 wins away from 20. And you go, okay.
It's can they get to 30?
And probably, but who knows? But we're going to take a quick break here, and we come back. A couple more things to talk about when it comes to change and the Colorado Rockies. Talking about one of the bigger changes this season, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Affected by Altitude with Evan and Skyler. And Skyler, we're getting pretty deep into the season here, into the dog days of summer. It's hot. We've played 78 games of Major League Baseball, and we've also officially reached the point where Warren Schaeffer, the interim manager, has managed as many games as Bud Black had before he was relieved of duties earlier this season.
Interesting.
And we were just talking about this a little bit before the break of the team certainly has been more watchable. And so the topic of the day, or the topic of this segment, is, has the management, has the coaching staff under Warren Schaeffer been the difference maker? Like, could Bud Black have reached this point with this team if given enough time, or was making the change and pulling in Warren Schaeffer the catalyst to the Rockies at least somewhat righting the ship?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about and to talk about, because it brings the question that it's a question and dilemma that people always have in baseball of, well, how much impact does a manager actually have? How much does he contribute in the grand scheme of things in wins and losses and how players are performing? It's a tough thing, unlike in other sports like a basketball or hockey and football, where those coaches, the head coaches, are very involved in making plays and helping the team and organizing things and how they operate and everything. They have a lot more, I think, hands-on impact. Whereas baseball, he's not called the head coach; he's called the manager. That small distinctions, and so it's always that question: well, how much impact does a manager have? And I think so much of it, Evan, is on the player personnel part of it, roster talent. The Rockies have done a horrible job constructing that roster. It's not a good roster in the grand scheme of things. They've done well to develop them, all this stuff. But a manager still has an impact in how they're utilized and using his tools correctly. And I think Warren Schaeffer, he's been better suited for the toolkit that he's been handed this season as opposed to Bud Black. Bud Black was like, I can't use these tools. Nope. And that makes sense. This team was not constructed in a way that Bud Black could use them the way he wanted to, that he was comfortable with, that he was used to using. But Warren Schaeffer, he can look at that workbench and those tools that are on the table, say, okay, I know how to utilize these to make something. And I think we're seeing that with Warren Schaeffer and just how he operates the team. And like we're saying, they have 3 more wins under Warren Schaeffer than they did with Bud Black. Not a lot. They're not still not winning a ton. But you can see in the in-game management how much of a difference Warren Schaeffer is having in just the feel and the vibe of the team and how they're being utilized to manufacture wins. And I think that's why it's shown, it was probably the right move to jettison Bud Black and turn this roster over to somebody else.
And I think another big part of it is, you mentioned, football and some of the other sports, is how much bigger a Major League Baseball coaching staff is in the dugout and on the sidelines of like an NFL team, where you've got your head coach and your 3-some coordinators and some other assistant coaches. And I think also what you're seeing with Warren Schaeffer is a lot more openness with the new guys in the clubhouse, with Clint Hurdle, with Jordan Pacheco, with Nick Wilson. And, you're potentially seeing some changes in how Daryl Scott's been coaching under Warren Schaeffer, with Dustin Garneau, the bullpen coach. And I think that all comes together under Schaeffer, who has repeatedly said, this is about learning, it's about growing, it's about seeing what we can build for the future. And I think that starts with the fact of how open to experimentation he's been with his lineups, where guys are playing, with batting order, where I don't think anybody else would have gone, hey, let's try Orlando Arcia at first base and see what happens. Or shuttling things around like that. You've seen him, like we discussed earlier, put Tyler Freeman all over the place in the lineup, not just leave guys in the same spot again and again and again. We've seen multiple different leadoff hitters. We've seen the middle and the bottom of the order look different. And we've seen lots of different guys get more playing time. We've seen much more platooning, especially with Ryan McMahon at third base. Not something we really ever saw in the Bud Black era of, well, we're facing a tough lefty today. Ryan, take a seat.
Yeah. And that's something I've noticed too with that lineup construction is I think Warren Schaeffer is putting into practice what the Rockies kind of intended during the offseason of, well, we just want to give guys more days off, cycle them through when we can. And I think Warren Schaeffer has been utilizing his bench way better than Bud Black would, where these guys aren't just coming in for pinch hit situations, which they do quite a bit, where he's going up for a platoon situation. It's the seventh inning. Well, I'm going to the platoon situation here because this could be the moment we try to win the game. I'm not going to wait until the ninth and pull back Ryan Ritter so Orlando Arcia can take an at bat here. No, he plays those platoon situations, and it feels more natural of cycling guys in, where knowing that outfield where, Jordan Beck, he's just getting the day off because we want to get Sam Hilliard in there now. No, these are guys, he's making sure guys get the playing time. Make sure everybody stays fresh with playing time.
Yeah.
Braxton Fulford, backup catcher, isn't necessarily playing every day. He's not playing as often as Hunter Goodman is, but he's still getting mixed in there, naturally, where, it becomes less noticeable. Like, oh, he hasn't played for a couple days. Everybody's getting cycled in a lot better.
Yeah. Fulford, especially, that he's going to get a start at least once a series, which is pretty much what you expect of your backup catcher. And he's getting that opportunity because Schaeffer and the Rockies were willing to make a change and decided they wanted to get younger with getting rid of Jacob Stallings. And now Fulford is up here and he's had some pretty good moments. He looks like a pretty adequate backup catcher. And the other thing that Schaeffer has done really well is making sure that Ryan Ritter is playing almost every day.
Yeah.
Like,
and he did that with Amador.
You could rest him and put Orlando Arcia at short. But why? What does that do for Ryan Ritter? And Ritter's not been as on fire as he was down in AAA, because of course not. It's a very different environment and it's very different level of competition. But you see these glimpses of promise with him very, very often, where he's playing fantastic defense at shortstop, as we knew he would, because he's a great defender. But even though his numbers aren't like eye-popping, he's hitting pretty okay.
Yeah.
He's got a couple triples. He's got a double or so. He's getting the job done where he needs to. And he still looks like a rookie. Don't get me wrong. And there's obviously a lot of growth and development that needs to happen. But he's being given the opportunity for that to happen, which I feel like that wouldn't have really happened under Bud Black.
Because we saw with Bud Black, that tendency to fall in love with a underperforming veteran just because he's a big leaguer and he's not a rookie. And we saw that with Kyle Farmer. Look how much Kyle Farmer played during Bud Black's time. And maybe compare that to with how he's been utilized by Warren Schaeffer, where Kyle Farmer is up into that role now of, I am the bench veteran infielder, utility guy. I'm going to bounce around that infield, play as needed, fill in at DH and whatnot. But it doesn't feel like, oh, well, Kyle Farmer is going to be the regular every single day in that lineup. He's penciled in at shortstop or second base. or at first base, even when it was him and Keston Hiura, it seemed like Hiura was pretty much playing more so than Farmer was. Whatnot. So Bud Black would fall in love with those guys where it felt like, oh, Farmer was probably playing every single day if Bud Black was still around right now. Oh, he'd be right in there every single day. It's shortstop and second base and first base.
And, Farmer is still getting some playing time. It's not like he's completely disappeared off the face of the earth, but he is playing less, where under Bud Black, he appeared in 33 games versus 22 under Schaeffer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they've seen them ease off, and they've also, parted ways with other veterans. Nick Martini is gone. Jacob Stallings is gone. Scott Alexander is gone. Keston Hiura is now gone. They gave him a shot. It didn't really work. They designated him for assignment.
Mm-hmm. Owen Miller was cycled through. Alan Trejo came in and left. So it was less becoming of Schaeffer to trying to hold on to some of these veteran guys just because they're veterans. But Warren Schaeffer, we're seeing that minor league manager experience coming through, because minor league managers, they got to cycle guys in. They got to utilize their bench and make sure everybody's getting their playing time, because they're part of the team. You can't just have them sitting on the bench and show up, and he's doing better cycling everybody in.
Yeah. But even when the decision is made for a player to be optioned or to be, let go, it feels much more like a logical move, or a move that you understand the reasoning of, versus, you used to be like, okay, well, why'd we do that? Like, when they optioned Michael Toglia, it made sense. He was struggling and needed a reset. The fact that they, optioned Carson Palmquist, who has shown flashes of potential, but definitely has homework that he needs to do. Or especially, I might get flack with this, but our boy Zach Agnos, when he was optioned, I think that was the right move.
Yeah.
Where, and Schaeffer said, it's like, we want to get him before he even goes to Albuquerque. We want to get him down to the pitching lab in Arizona. And we want to work with him and see what we can tinker with and try and polish up before, and he'll get another shot. But he has homework to do, because, Agnos came back from the bereavement list and was just not the same pitcher. And I do not judge him at all for that, but he was struggling very badly. And he had never really made the strikeout stuff work at the big league level, despite the results he had gotten so far. But that's an important part of his game that he needs to find. And so, okay, let's send him down. Let's tweak. Let's tinker. And it was the same for Zach Veen, where it was very unpopular for Zach Veen to get optioned, which, did happen before Bud Black was fired. But then the team made the decision of, let's send Veen down to the complex. Let's have him work on some stuff in addition to, working to get better from an ankle injury that he'd been dealing with. It was, how can we help him develop and learn?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's that feeling you get of where this kind of next transition here into more about Shape, where those difference in those post-game press conferences, or just the conferences that he has with the media in general, it's just a lot more, you can tell a lot more that he is that player's manager. He's trying to protect his guys, but also, he's keeping it straight, keeping it real about when he's talking about guys that, guys need to work on stuff, but then he leaves in that hope of, but we'll get him back here. He has to go work on some things, but he'll be back.
And he does it without throwing anybody under the bus.
Yeah.
And
without making it seem like they just got an F on their report card, and he's punishing them by sending them down.
And a really good example of his ownership of the situation, too, is when the Rockies got walked off in extras in that last game in D.C. against James Wood. Very good hitter.
Should have walked him.
Who had been crushing Rockies pitching the entire series. He was basically the Nationals hitter who regularly showed up in all of those games.
Yeah.
And you probably could have intentionally walked him. Probably should have intentionally walked him. And Seth Halverson throws a splitter that doesn't move downward. It hung middle, and the Rockies get walked off. And Schaeffer owned it at the end of the game. Was like, yeah, well, I thought we could get him out, but we probably shouldn't have pitched to him.
Yeah, that's on me. That's not on Halverson. So yeah,
And I feel like that's been typical of a lot of his post-game pressers. As he's more of the player's manager. He doesn't throw anybody to the bus. He clearly gets along with his guys, but there's a lot of, like you said earlier, the minor league manager in him, of talking about, well, here's what we need to work on. Here's this learning experience. Here's what I learned. Here's what I shouldn't have done.
Yeah.
And I think it's great. And is he the man permanently for the job? I don't know. But we've said it a couple times already this season, is right now, the 2025 Rockies, he is the man for the job.
Yeah. And for, like we said, like I mentioned, this is the right guy to use these tools and help install a philosophy of aggressive play. Hey, try to take the extra base. Let's steal more. No, we're going to run. We're going to drop bunts. Let's play small ball. No, he's going to do a lot. He's throws caution to the wind. No, you can't afford to be cautious. You have what, 18 wins now? You're 18-60. Like, why are we trying to be cautious? Let's do stuff and try and generate some offense. And that's what the Rockies are doing now.
Yeah. Because, of course, the Rockies still want to win as many games as possible. Yeah. They're a professional baseball team. But there's much less the feeling of Bud Black's overly cautiousness, where it's like, I don't want to give up any opportunity that I have by being aggressive.
Yeah.
Versus the, let's get crazy, let's get nuts, let's do whatever we can to win. And if it doesn't work, whatever. The season's already a bust, so we'll learn something from it.
Yeah. Because Bud Black, it was, my goal is to try and win as many games as possible. He tried to put winning above all else. Okay, that's admirable, but that's not what the Rockies need right now. In order to get to that, you have to do some of this other stuff. No, don't be cautious. Let a guy run. Let a guy try and steal second base. If he gets thrown out, who cares?
Do a suicide squeeze. I can't remember the last time I saw the Rockies attempt a squeeze. And you had Ryan Ritter try and lay down a bunt that knocked him flat on his head.
Hey, he got that bunt down, though. Drove in the run.
And Orlando Arcia scored. And it was amazing to see, because Ritter's sitting on his butt in the dirt and just watching Orlando Arcia slide home. And it's like, it's fun. It's interesting. It feels better to be watching these games right now.
Yeah. Yeah. You see a lot more to the, okay, this guy's going to just try to bunt two runners over. No, you're going to be cautious. You're going to take an extra little step off of second base. Oh, no, you've been picked off a second in a crucial situation. But hey, I like the thought process of, you're wanting to get a bigger lead, trying to catch them snoozing. You can just see that difference in the approach, a little bit of spark of energy that this team needed from a new manager.
Yeah.
And, well, we might mention in the next segment, but you don't need Bud Black's mentality with this team anymore. You need to move forward, try new things. And Schaeffer is kind of the epitome of that right now.
Yeah. The fact that he's got, Jordan Beck and Ryan McMahon, who are, the sluggers of the two of the sluggers on the team, regularly attempting to play like station to station, small ball sometimes, laying down bunts where needed, trying new things. That's what you want to see.
Mm-hmm.
But we are going to take one more quick break, and when we get back, we'll have a little bit more to talk about that Skyler alluded to. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back to Affected by Altitude with Evan and Skyler for our third and final segment. And Skyler, we've already talked about change a lot this episode.
Nothing
how change is important, how change is necessary. And over the last couple weeks, especially while we were away last week, there have been a lot of members of this organization's past and present, from journalists to broadcasters to players, coming out and saying how the Rockies need to change. You've got guys in the clubhouse saying the Rockies need to change. You've got Jack Corrigan going on the Dan Patrick Show and saying the Rockies very clearly need to change how they do things when it comes to development and coaching in the minor leagues. You've got Schaeffer regularly talking about how you've got to learn and grow. You had that article from The Athletic a couple weeks ago where a bunch of former players, most notably DJ LeMahieu and Nolan Arenado, both said that the team needs to adjust and adapt and become a modern baseball franchise. And now, just recently, we've got perhaps the strongest voice of all of these so far coming out and saying basically the same thing. And it's a surprising source. It's co-owner of the Colorado Rockies and the younger Monfort brother, Charlie Monfort.
Yeah, it was interesting with the Denver Post because Patrick Saunders has spoken repeatedly. I'm like, well, I've put in requests to interview the Monforts. They've been declined. All this stuff until finally, I don't know what happened, but no, this past week he was able to sit down with Charlie Monfort, and they talk a little bit about baseball, but it focuses more on just Charlie Monfort and just where he is in life right now, being sober and overcoming some of his addictions and things and the work that he's doing. But they do spend a lot of time talking about the Rockies, and Dick Monfort is in those conversations too. That he got interviewed a little bit over the phone with the Denver Post. So you're hearing from both Monforts in this, and it talks about their relationship and everything, but it's both of them acknowledging the fact that we need some change. And like you're saying, I think Charlie is a little bit more vocal about it. Of we need a fresh set of eyeballs, from someone from outside of the organization to come in and give us new ideas and other things. And Dick Monfort, of course, is a little more hesitant. Well, he knows what's being said out there. He understands the sentiments that they're too loyal. They only promote from within. But he's also, he brings up something we've talked about before where he's hesitant. He's not opposed to bringing in outside help, but he is hesitant because we play in such a unique environment, and people outside of our organization, they think they can just come in and, let's do this. Translation, Dick Monfort's probably still against it.
Yeah. But even Dick Monfort being willing to say something, this is really the only public statement he's made basically all season.
Yeah, acknowledging where they're at. And
he's acknowledging Charlie's opinion, because it's a good statement that Charlie made where he's been much more detached from the Rockies day-to-day over recent years. He's not really heavily involved in day-to-day operations.
Hasn't been since 2010 when he kind of had to step back because of his off-the-field struggles, and then Dick kind of became overseer over everything. He became the main guy.
Yeah. And he says, first of all, it's like every time I see the team and how it's doing, it makes me want to cry. Same. And it's like, that's a pretty bold statement for the co-owner of the team to make. But he says I think we need a new set of eyeballs. We need to give someone the opportunity, someone who knows baseball and has lived and breathed baseball and sometimes died with baseball. Someone who knows everything that all of the good teams we face do, from grassroots on up. Someone who's going to stand by their decisions because they're going to live with it. And he's absolutely right. This is the exact kind of thing that we've all been clamoring for quite some time now, but especially this season, of you need someone from outside the organization, a baseball lifer, not just a Rockies lifer, a baseball lifer, a baseball person to come in and evaluate and figure things out and make tough decisions that frankly Dick Monfort has shown he's not really willing to do. And to Dick Monfort's credit, he said, that's not only Charlie's opinion, it's the public's in general, and I get it. There is a criticism which is fair, that we are very loyal, insular, and we promote from within. Then of course, like you said, he tries to lay the blame back at the feet of, well, we play in a weird environment, so I don't know. But he at least comes back to say, I agree that what has gone on over the last few years is not representative of what we want. And I think there are a lot of reasons for that, but it's probably time to have somebody who has a fresh opinion, a fresh set of eyes. I'm not opposed to bringing people in from the outside. It's like, that's what I want to hear. So, okay, Dick, you're saying the right thing now. Now you got to do the right thing.
Yeah. Listen to your little brother.
And
it's just nice to see the ownership, because that's something that they've refused. It's always the empty words still. No, they can say this stuff and still not do anything. That's a given at this point, it seems. But it's acknowledging that's the first step to getting better. And we've seen that. Charlie Monfort has been in more of the decisions this season of the big stuff. Bud Black, he was involved in those discussions about relieving Bud Black. He's getting back into things, a little bit more active into it. And I think that's something that I think Dick Monfort's needed, is somebody who can kind of press him a little bit. He hasn't had that. Charlie's been off dealing with his stuff off the field, hasn't really been involved with the team. He's been going through a lot. And that's kind of left Dick Monfort to his own devices. He doesn't have somebody, a family mom, who better to combat you in the team decisions than your own family, your own brother, who's not gonna suck up to you.
Yeah, someone who is on your level.
Yeah.
Your equal, who's going to tell you, no, that's a bad idea. And back in the day when Charlie was much more involved with the team, he had a lot of the same problems that Dick has currently.
Yeah.
But I think Charlie, having stepped away now for the better portion of a decade to work on himself, and huge kudos to him, because it's a difficult journey that he's gone through. But it's also given him a different perspective on the team, because he's not been involved in the day-to-day minutia of the Colorado Rockies, whereas Dick Monfort has. And like you said, he hasn't really had anybody on his level to tell him no for the better part of a decade now.
Yeah. And you need that when you're in charge of something. You don't need a bunch of yes men. And that's what the Rockies have had. That's what Dick Monfort surrounded himself with. There's a lot of yes men, guys who aren't going to push back. Or they're going to keep quiet because they know he's not going to listen anyway. No, but I think it's a good step in the right direction, because it's if it was just Charlie saying it, okay. But the fact that it's been guys in the clubhouse, current players talking about things, former players talking about things, coaches like Clint Hurdle, other guys talking about things, the media that closely follow the Rockies tend to say that this team needs to do a lot of different things. The fact that the Monforts are seeing that, hearing that feedback, and now hopefully starting to take it to heart and realizing maybe we should do some of this stuff.
Yeah, because I feel like Dick Monfort being largely absent for most of the season, in addition to the Rockies being just so bad, emboldened a lot of people, past and present with the organization, to start speaking up.
Yeah.
Where I can't think of a time previously where you would have had coaches actively in the dugout at that time, like Clint Hurdle, acknowledging that they're behind the times with this or need to fix that, where your radio guy, who, you're literally paying these guys to be positive about your team, it's their job, is going on, nationally broadcast sports show on Dan Patrick Show and saying, it doesn't seem to me like Dick Monfort is committed to coaching and development in the farm system.
Yeah.
That's a huge deal.
Or like Ryan Spielborg's going on, he's got his podcast. Spilly's very outspoken, going around things. But friend of the show, Patrick Lyons, going on shows like Foul Territory and having a chance to speak more nationally. Like Patrick Saunders as well has been on there. So, guys are getting more opportunities to speak up and talk about the state of the Rockies, more national attention. Hopefully is, peaking up the interest of Dick Monfort, where he realizes, we need to fix this stuff. Some changes coming. And that's kind of what that interview and keep hearing is that Dick Monfort keeps saying, like, changes are coming. We're still evaluating things. They're not going fully into it. They're not playing their hand, but they're mentioning we're looking at things, how we need to shake things up, reevaluating. And that's something that Patrick Saunders and Troy Rink of the Denver Post keep speculating, that major front office changes could be coming, and they almost expect them to be coming. Now, will all those changes be for the best? Who knows? Hopefully Bob Nightingale is not correct in his speculation.
Yeah,
but
that's
you expect things, but then it kind of puts you up and like, well, what changes are they going to make, and is it going to make any difference, good or bad?
Yeah, and it's oh boy. I really hope that Bob Nightingale is wrong. Um, as he is sometimes, and that's the hope, because the rumor is so current Rockies director of pitching Steve Foster, former pitching coach, is stepping away from the organization and expected to take a coaching role with Texas Tech. Awesome, good for him. He's from Texas. That's a pretty cool move, and it also opens up a spot in the Rockies. You know, more on the front office end of the coaching staff. You're directing and scouting and all of that stuff to make more changes. And then Bob Nightingale comes out and says that the front runner candidate is potentially Bud Black for the new director of pitching. And I wrote about this for the site for Purple Row for Monday. And if that is the move that is made, it means that this organization, that Dick Monfort, have learned nothing.
Yep.
By going with the safe, the comfortable, the familiar face of a guy that you fired less than 2 months ago to be the director of your pitching strategy moving forward. It's a truly terrible idea.
Yeah. This is what Bob Nightingale wrote. Former Colorado Rockies manager Bud Black, who turned 68 on June 30th, could be rejoining the Rockies just a month after being dismissed as manager after 8 seasons. He is a strong candidate to rejoin the Rockies as a pitching director or special assistant. He has let friends know he has no interest in retiring and wants to remain in the game.
And it just, if that move is what's made, it goes against everything that Charlie Monfort is saying in this interview that he did with Patrick Saunders, because Charlie said a lot of the right things that Dick hasn't said, where he says, we have all sorts of different judges, you guys being the media, who can tell things are bad. Him or her, whoever it might be, they have to be accountable not only to Dick and I, but they have to be accountable to the press and the public. The biggest thing, that's who's being hurt by this the most, is the fans. That's a great acknowledgement. But then he goes on to say, we have to get back to letting the public know that we give a crap. That's a word for word quote. I think sometimes fans think we don't care. I read about it and they think it's just a money-making machine, and that's far from the truth, but I don't blame them for thinking that. Again, Charlie Monfort saying all the right things, but we need the organization to do the right thing alongside saying it, because there's no move that's going to make the fans feel like you don't give a crap, feel like you haven't learned anything, than a move like making Bud Black your director of pitching.
Yeah. You know, when you make the spectacle of, oh, we fired him. No, they could have easily like, hey, we've mutually agreed to part ways, and he's moving into the front office as a special assistant. No, he could have easily stayed with the organization, but when you made the clear cut of, we've dismissed him, what we've done is unacceptable. But yeah, sure, what he's done is unacceptable, but let's bring him back into an even more prominent role that will have him impacting the entire organization. Like, no, that's asinine. That's stupid. That is not what you need to do. Because look what happened with pitching over the time with him as manager. The pitching whisperer was not good at whispering to those pitchers anymore. They were not responding. The pitching was getting worse. It's still not great, but there's been a noticeable difference since he's been gone. Little things here and there, but we're seeing some guys just getting more comfortable and filling into things. Why bring him back to continue to preach pitch at the knees? That's what we need. Pitch, keep it low in the zone. Pitch at the knees. That's what we're going to do in this organization.
Especially when getting away from his pitching philosophy has statistically shown to have helped this team improve.
Yeah. And when you speak about, oh, we need to make change, we need fresh set of eyes. Yeah, let's bring back the manager of 8 seasons, a 68-year-old, and put him at the very top of pitching operations. Yeah, that's a fresh set of eyes.
And it's like, and I even get, it's like, I get wanting to be loyal to Bud Black because things ended badly with you having to fire him. But first of all, that was your fault to begin with, because if you hadn't brought him back at the natural end of his contract, you don't end with hurt feelings of having to fire him and having to go through all of this in the middle of the season. And I could even see it's like, all right, well, we want to put him in like an honorary position or something. Okay. If you want to make him like a special assistant, gets to hang out every now and then, makes media appearances, that's one thing. But you cannot have him be involved in day-to-day baseball operations in any capacity. You just can't.
Yeah, you not so soon after. Like, yeah, down the road. No, during the off season, after the season is over, you can look at stuff. But so soon after that breakup, girl, you do not need to go back to that man. You are too good for him.
You are valuable. You are important. You don't need him. He may need you.
Yeah.
You don't need him.
Yeah.
Treat yourself.
Yeah. Treat yourself, Rockies. Like, take care of yourself. You are a strong, independent franchise, and you do not need that man.
It really is, though. It's like going back to the Bud Blackwell so soon after firing him and saying everything about this season has been unacceptable so far is such a move that lacks self-awareness and self-respect.
Yeah. They're trying to rebound.
Yeah.
Dick Monfort wants that rebound.
And I really hope that this is just a mistake or a misinterpretation of, yeah, maybe his name got floated, but he's not actually a candidate or something like that.
He's not a strong candidate type of thing. Like, yeah, it'd be like, just promote Scott Oberg to that position. Or, Aaron Cook has been said, okay, I like putting on this uniform and being with the team. Like, okay, what can Aaron Cook do for your organization with pitching?
That's actually something I do wonder if they're evaluating, because Cookie's been around a lot more in a uniform in the dugout than we've seen him in years this season. And I do wonder if maybe they're doing a little test evaluation of, is this a guy that we can bring into the fold for coaching purposes?
Yeah. So, and Cookie understands some things better than I think Black does these days.
The guy who actually pitched here.
Yeah.
And was successful pitching here.
Yeah. Who could effectively talk about, pitching low, but also just utilizing your stuff of, hey, this worked for me, but it's not going to work for everybody.
Yeah. And there's plenty of guys like the Rockies being overly insular and, choosing guys that they are familiar with is definitely a problem. But when it comes to selecting former players to be a part of the organization, that's not always a bad thing. Dustin Garneau has been very good as a bullpen coach. Scott Oberg as the minor league pitching coordinator. Pedro Estacio has done really good things down at the Rockies Dominican complex.
Chuck Nasty and Todd Helton have roamed around the organization doing stuff.
You can make those kinds of moves work. It's just you can't rely entirely on them, but those are fine. But that's also, most of them, except for Charlie Blackmon, have happened after years passed.
Yeah.
Just please, Rockies, don't make that mistake.
Don't bring Bud Black. Don't go back to him.
Don't go where I can't follow, Mr. Frodo.
Oh my! Oh, hooray!
But I think that's going to do it here for us on Affected by Altitude. Thank you so much for listening. Skyler, where can the folks find you at?
Find me over on Twitter at Skyler Timmons or on Blue Sky at STimmons13, WSK1.social. And writing Wednesday Rock Piles over at purplerow.com. If you missed it, go check out my last one where I wrote about my dad and his time being a Rockies fan. That was a tough one to write, but a nice one to write for me. And also, people are hanging with us last week and everything of dealing with my dad passing away and funeral and all that stuff and taking care of things. Hopefully with every Rocky ever, my brother Dustin and I hopefully to bring back some Every Rocky Ever this summer, and we're hoping to do one to talk about our dad and everything a little bit more. But you can also follow me over with Fans First Sports Network, ffsn.com, where I mostly write some game recaps and then throw in the occasional regular Rockies article.
Yeah. And Skyler, I'm glad to have you back on the show. My condolences, of course. And it really was a touching article that you wrote. I think a lot of our readers, it really meant a lot to them as well. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah. And how cool it was, or the day of his funeral, the Rockies then had that awesome game against the, it was against the Nationals when they hit those home runs late in the game to win it. That was a fun one.
It's the baseball salute. It's like the 21 gun salute, but instead of shooting the rounds off, you're hitting home runs.
It's true.
Remember that you can find Rocky Mountain Rooftop on your favorite podcasting platforms of choice: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, everything like that. You can also find Rocky Mountain Rooftop on all social media platforms, including youtube.com, where you can find the video versions of the show at Rocky Mountain Rooftop. That's at ROCKYMTN Rooftop. You can find me over on Blue Sky at evanlang27.bsky.social and on Purple Row writing the Monday Rock Piles and doing the weekly Pebble Reports every Tuesday. We've got some good stuff going on with the Pebble Reports, so I appreciate everybody who's been checking out our new and improved look over there. And I appreciate hearing from everybody. Once again, thank you all so much for listening to another episode of Affected by Altitude. We will catch you next time. Skyler, hit him with it.
Farewell. This has been Affected by Altitude, a Colorado Rockies podcast with Rocky Mountain Rooftop, a proud affiliate of the Fans First Sports Network. Catch new episodes every Monday on wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Be sure to follow us on YouTube as well for video versions of the show.